first part of working on the headlights and getting them open is obviously getting them out. So I've already taken off a bunch of aftermarket parts that I have, like the cold air intake and a few other bezels. In normal stock, you probably have to take out your air box first, so I'm not going to go over that because obviously I don't have one anymore. But then taking out the headlights is pretty simple. First thing to do is disconnect the electrical connections. Now stock, that's only one, which is this little plug here, right, which pretty much has a latch. You got to get your finger in there and then just wiggle it out. It can be pretty tight because it fits in there good, so it just takes a little time to pull that out from the right angle. And this is again one of the reasons why, even if you think you might be able to get at it with whatever your setup is, pulling out this air filter, I've done the first time I did it. I've since learned that I don't have to, but you need some room to get in there because it can be a pain in the neck. Then I've got some extra electrical that I have to take off because of my RGB headlights and stuff. I'm just going to put this down and do that now. You, if you're stock, will not have this. As you can see, my RGB kit is from EM Tuning. If you're considering to demonize or RGB, I highly recommend EM Tuning. Among other things, EM Tuning has a special kit for the demonize with Morimoto that's actually brighter than the one that they sell directly. At least that's what the research I did when I did it a year ago. I assume that's still the case. All right, so I've got the electrical off. Now, the next thing is I'm going to pull the other screws off. Now, pretty much all the screws, all the bolts are T25, so you need a good T25 driver. I work my way from the bottom. There's one down here, and there's another on the other side down here. So you take those off. Then the next thing is I step up to the adjustment screw, which is here, and then there's 1 and 2 on the top. So now obviously highly recommend using either, if your screwdriver happens to be magnetic like mine, it's helpful because you don't want to drop these bolts. They're hard to get and they're really hard to fish out of the bottom, especially if you get a skid plate like I do. So 1, good news is you take out the airbox and stuff, you can get your finger down there to just also help in case your screwdriver's magnet isn't strong enough to pull out all the bolts, which can be the case. So those 2 are out. Next, this one here. This one is weird. You don't want to unscrew it all the way because it's actually got a bracket that's used to adjust the height of the headlights. So you unscrew it a bit and then just slide it out. See, it's like a little bracket in there to adjust. Then the 2 top. Don't do what I just did. Almost lose it. All right. You can tell the screws apart when you put them back in because you're gonna have 2 types. You have the round head with the washer that goes in the bottom ones, and then there's the sort of flatter head with the washer that goes on the top. Now the next thing you have to do is pull out the headlight. It's going to be hard for me to show, but you have to work it out from this side, and then you have to disconnect this little hose, which helps get, I believe it helps pull air in. I think it's some sort of air hose. So once you've got that out, Just angle them out like so. Nice and easy. Now you got your headlight out. All right, so I've been asked a few times if I'd either do people's headlights or do some sort of tutorial to help. I don't really have the time to do them. As much as I'd love to help people out, I can't. So I'll give the tutorial idea a try. I've opened my lights many times, probably 4 or 5 times at this point. So this is a little bit old hat for me. Preference, you'll see some things that aren't in stock lights. I'll try and point them out, but the process is the same for taking them apart either way. Tools wise, you want some good plastic interior tools to help you separate. I highly recommend getting one of these. It's a separator tool. I got mine from Morimoto, if I remember correctly, who sells some of the aftermarket stuff that are in my headlights. It is a huge help to do this. You will need a good set of torque wrenches. Different sizes are in the headlights. And perhaps the most important thing, you're gonna need a good heat gun. Now, first question I get a lot is heat gun versus baking them. I know a lot of people put them in the oven. I'm not partial to that myself. The reason why is you have to do a lot more. You have to take off all these ballasts. You just got to be really careful with screws and things melting, and heaven forbid you forget to take it out on time or it gets too hot. It's just more work, in my opinion, than needed. Whereas the heat gun works great. Again, I've put these and taken them apart and putting them back together multiple times with a heat gun. It is easy once you learn how, and it's particularly easy if you have a separator tool like the one that I have. So the first thing you have to do with this is separate a number of clips. So these metal clips are put in different places along 1, 2, 3. There's like 3 in the bottom also. So what you have to do to separate them is actually pretty easy. You could use a flathead screwdriver if you don't have a removal tool like this. This part is not particularly sensitive, plastic versus metal, but I like to use these just in case. Plus I need them for other things. So, you know, just sort of get on under it, work it out, and it will just pop off. So you just go around, pull these off, make sure to keep track of them. They are pretty much impossible to get as replacement parts. I've lost 1 or 2, and if it wasn't for the fact that my friend at EM Tuning is bailing me out and sending me a few that he has left over from headlight jobs he did, I would still be without them, because you can't order them anywhere. So it's really just a matter of getting them from like a salvage yard or somebody who happens to have them lying around. So try to keep track of them. You could probably do without 1 or 2 if you do lose them. This headlight's been doing without 1 for a while, but I wouldn't recommend it if you can avoid it. After you've taken your clips off, the next thing is to start separating the headlight lens from the rest of the assembly. So you start your heat gun. I tend to keep it pretty cranked up and just be careful. You need to heat. I go sort of an area at a time. So I take the top and I start heating the top all the way across until I start seeing it get, you can see it like sort of bubble and get soft. You got to keep this moving, because especially if your heat gun's pretty hot, you could technically melt the plastic lens. So just keep it moving. And then as you start to see it, see that black sealant, as you start to see that heat up, you put something like a separator tool, or it could be just I guess you could do it with a screwdriver. I think I did it with a metal screwdriver the first time I did it. It was much harder. And I quickly bought plastic tools to finish the project, actually, because I was worried I was going to break it. But as you can see on the side here, it's starting to come across. And as you start to pull it apart and work your way over, what you do is you keep heating as you go. The trick is you're not going to get it all the way separated in any one place until you've worked your way over a little bit at a time. You can really start to hear the sealant is starting to loosen up now. Once you get a significant amount of it heated and it's starting to separate, then what you can do is you can start working with two hands and drop the gun. Then I use a pry tool, this plastic tool, and the separator at the same time to try and get it further apart. Again, be careful. You can break the lenses if you put too much pressure. So you have to just put a steady, slow pressure until you start to get to the edge of the lens, and you can get a tool like this under it. See? There we go. There's the edge that I was looking for. So then the trick is to get the top over to the edges open as much as possible. So, and I work over to one edge on the top, then to the other edge on the top, until I feel like I've got it really, the top really separated. There we go. As you can see, it's actually separated. This is going to get a little gooey. You'll see we'll lift it off. It's actually great. Audi uses a lot of sealant, so I haven't had to replace it. I've had a lot of the people ask me what type of sealant and stuff. I haven't needed that because I just tend to heat it up and spread it around when I put them back together. So now what I'm going to do is, since I've got this pretty separated, I'm going to put another tool in here just to keep that from getting closed while I flip it, and repeat the same sort of process on the bottom, starting with heat. Once the whole thing's separated, then the next is to actually pull the lens off. Now I pull the lens off straight, or as straight as possible, to try and keep anything from scratching it, try and keep fingerprints off of it, and try to maintain as much of the epoxy as possible. And that's it. It's now in two pieces. So at this point, the headlight's in two pieces. The lens, clear lens, actually has a second piece in it. You can see there's a little, it's got, normally it would have the amber turn signal. This is the holder for that amber turn signal that we all want to get rid of. It actually comes off, little clip there, screw, and then some clips on the side. Mine actually has the B8 driver's clear signal, and then I have wrapped that in carbon fiber and also put a S4 logo on that. I'll be replacing those with a different color to match the new motif of the car. But anyways, those are pretty simple. Then the rest of the headlight at this point is a number of different pieces. You can actually get the whole LED bar out, the LED bar out. That takes a lot of time. There are numerous screws here and here that you would need to remove this entire assembly.
I've done that because I put in the RGB and Demon Eyes and RGB DRLs, all from EM Tuning. And I've also custom wrapped, carbon fiber wrapped the whole shroud for the lights, including some detail work around the islands. And then of course this is also a Morimoto etched lens, which has been aftermarket also. I'm not in this video going to go around taking apart the whole shroud. Once you're to this point, it is pretty easy. You do have to be careful. The plastic is sensitive. There's numerous torque wrench sizes that you will need to do to take it apart. I will probably take this and remove it, and this I need to change, but I don't plan to take the whole shroud apart.